What's up, grappling fans? It is your friendly neighborhood BJJ podcaster, Raph Esparza, coming to you with a brand new episode of Grappling Hour. Now, I'm very excited about today's episode because today you get to see an interview that I did with new friend of the show, Chris Van Vliet. That's right, Chris Van Vliet, the current, reigning, defending GOAT of pro wrestling interviews. And apparently now mixed martial arts interviews? It's very strange. Don't worry, I give him a lot of mess about it. But before we see that interview, I got some notes from some concerned friends and fans of the show about what happened to me as I signed off of the Royal Rumble Fight Companion that we did about a month ago. And I haven't talked about it on air. I haven't made any statements about it. I just wanted to wait to get the security footage from our friends over at Milton Arguello's Mixed Martial Arts Academy. And honestly, I think that'll probably explain things probably better than I can. So why don't you just look at the footage and see for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, the winner of the 2021 WWE BJJ Championship is...
Keep going. Give me my belt. Yes, give me my belt. And the new winner, Light Skin Daddy. Raise my hand. There we go. Raise my hand. The champ. The champ.
So yeah, that's what happened. My enforcer of my heel stable turned on me as I was about to announce the winner of last year's WWE BJJ week. I'm sure many of you have questions, the first of which being, Raph, since you haven't given the belt to last year's WWE BJJ week to the rightful winners, is there going to be a WWE BJJ week for 2022? The answer is yes, we will. And I will get that belt back because it doesn't belong to him. The fact that he would take someone else's belt that they worked for, someone else's joy, that he would rip that from their hands, I'm not going to stand for that. And in fact, not only will I get that belt back, but I will make sure that the winners, whoever they are, and full disclosure, I don't remember who won. Because of the account of the CTE that I took from those chair shots, we will be replaying some of those videos for you guys to see the very, very great work that people did from last year. So to review, WWE BJJ Week 2021 winners, you will be revealed very soon. WWE BJJ Week 2022 applicants, we're going to be taking your submissions for a brand new belt that you will see very, very soon. Anyway, we got a great interview for you guys today. Sorry, now I can get out of promo world and get back to host world. I think that you guys are going to enjoy this. Chris Van Vliet is a very nice human being. We have a very good conversation. Without any further ado, here's Chris Van Vliet. Ladies and gents, I'm very excited for you to see our guest today. You can see part of him right here, but we'll get to the actual person. He is a 4-time Emmy winner. He is also somebody who looks like he slums with us wrestling fans whenever you see him here, because let's be honest, take a look at him. Look at him right now. This dude looks like he should actually be saving Princess Jasmine, not going to interview Hornswoggle.
I'm Aladdin?
I mean, it's a pretty good one to get, am I right, though? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Chris Van Vliet. Sir, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank
Pleasure
you so
to
much
meet.
for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
Cheers
Cheers
as
indeed.
well. Wow. Gotta have some of this.
So you picked this out. What did you pick for us?
I love hazy IPAs. The hazier, the better. And for anybody that's watching this, my goodness, it doesn't get any hazier. It looks like we're drinking orange juice.
I was about to say, you picked the non-pulp hazy
I'm
right here.
I'm going to have to pace myself because this goes down so easy.
But let's be real here. Okay, I'm going to air my grievances to begin with.
Okay.
The first grievance is this. Sometimes when I see you over here, I just think to myself, but why wrestling? How do you do the wrestling? Because when people see me, they go yeah, that makes sense. You're a wrestling fan. When I saw you, my first thought was, I don't know about this guy.
Wow.
Let me check his credentials.
Oh.
And then I heard the deep dives that you were doing, and I go, nah, he knows his shit. All right, everybody, I was wrong. First impression's very wrong here.
I've been a lifetime wrestling fan. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. I was a backyard wrestler when I was 16. Chris Sharp was my backyard wrestling name. Sharp talking, sharp walking, sharp dressing, all that stuff. Man, I was about to cut a promo there for you.
I want it, but we'll come back to it.
But then I went to wrestling school when I was in college. So I wanted to be a pro wrestler. I was drawn right into it. And when I get passionate about something, I dive all the way in.
Sure.
I don't check the depth of the water. I don't check the temperature of the water. Just dive all the way in.
Sure.
So I also was really passionate about broadcasting. And I wanted to be, either a radio broadcaster or a TV broadcaster. I was so incredibly lucky that those two worlds were able to merge together in this amazing thing called entertainment news. So I was interviewing actors and directors and comedians, and then every once in a while wrestling would come to town. And I remember asking my boss the first time, I'm like, do you think we could interview a wrestler? And she's like, yeah, we've done that before. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna get paid to talk to a wrestler. And that's kind of where it began, was now I had a wrestler in front of us. And this was 15 years ago when I did my first wrestling interview with Bobby Lashley.
Very timely, by the way.
Who was the ECW champion at that time. And I was just like, there's not a lot of these longer interviews with wrestlers. There's certainly not a lot of deep dives where someone's asking them the questions that fans genuinely care about.
Sure.
So I would get the questions out of the way of like, all right, what are you in town for? What's that big shiny belt on your shoulder? How much are tickets? Okay, anyway, great. Now I would ask all the questions that I cared about as a fan, and that's honestly where it began. And I was uploading these to my YouTube channel just so there would be like a digital library of these existing somewhere. Because the way that TV worked back in the day was if you weren't watching Channel 19 at exactly 4:17 p.m. on that Wednesday, you never saw this. So I was like, well, somebody that's not in our viewing area might enjoy this. I'm going to upload it to this crazy thing called YouTube, and it's kind of just grown from there.
I do want to backtrack here because we'll come back to the entertainment stuff. Where do you get hooked? Like, what are the matches that hook you in? I know Hogan and Rock is like your definitive one, but where is the one where you kind of said like, nah, man?
By the time Rock Hogan came around, I was already like, the claws were already dug in deep, right? I had this best friend I was 16, and I had this best friend. He lived one city over, so it was like a 20-minute drive, which is pretty far when you're in high school. And we did this crazy thing in the 90s called talking on the phone. It's wild, right? Yes. And we talked on the phone like literally every night, which was a thing that you commonly did with your best friends. And I knew on Monday nights at 9 o'clock, our calls would abruptly come to an end because he was a huge wrestling fan. And then one Monday night I went, all right, man, I will turn it on. I will watch this with you. And then the next commercial break, we can finish our thought. And I turned it on, and McMahon and Austin was the big storyline at the time. And I just got hooked. And I don't know specifically what it was, but I just loved the larger-than-life personas. I loved that charisma was oozing out of every man and woman that was on the screen.
Sure.
And that was it. I was in. And those are such formidable years of your life, 15, 16, 17. And I just saw a lot of myself in those characters. And that was really it. My first ever WrestleMania I watched on a screen was WrestleMania 2000.
Okay.
Which is WrestleMania 16.
Yeah.
And then I went to WrestleMania 18, Rock Hogan. And during that time, backyard wrestling, going to wrestling school. Yeah.
Man, okay. So there's a little bit about the backyard wrestling I have to ask. Because it's almost impossible to see you as a heel. You're such a good guy in your interviews. When did you develop this Chris Sharp character? Because he seems infinitely fascinating to me now, seeing how nice you are to people. So where did that come about?
I loved Triple H, and I loved how mean he was. I loved his entrance theme.
Sure.
Chris Sharp would tape the right wrist and hand.
Okay.
And just the left wrist like Triple H did. I would chew gum during promos. It was basically Triple H with short dark hair. So that was really it. And it was just, and every heel will tell you this, that it's way more fun to be the bad guy.
Absolutely.
Than it is to be the good guy. So I think it was just like, we all have that in our personality. We all have that thing where you'd like to slap the cashier or like punch the guy in the face who, honked at you at the red light. Like,
Sure.
we all have that in us.
Yeah.
And I think the pro wrestling allows that to come out of you. So yeah, Chris Sharp was just, he was not a very nice man. I think what I call myself, the arrogant asshole and the pompous prick.
It's so hard because I think what maybe audiences may be picking up on here that maybe you don't even is when you say that you're a heel and you're a Canadian, I can't take that seriously. Like those two things seem at odds to me. So I have to ask, kind of establishing questions here. What was your finishing move? What were your signature moves?
I was so stupid. Like there's zero psychology in any backyard wrestling. So let me just preface it with that. My setup move was That's Incredible, which was the twisting tombstone.
Oh, damn.
And I remember my one friend's like, I'm not taking pile drivers. And I'm like, oh, don't worry. Just tuck your head into my crotch and you'll be fine.
Yeah, of course.
And he's like, I don't want to take a pile driver. I'm like, it'll totally be okay. And like, you're literally dropping your friend on their head. And then somehow That's Incredible wasn't enough, like dropping them on their head with a twisting tombstone. Then I would jump up and deliver what I thought was a pretty good looking swanton bomb. That was my finishing move.
Bro, okay. So when I was growing up, my thing was always when I would wrestle with the guys, I was always the technician. And I didn't know then that it would lead me to jiu-jitsu and to grappling. But when I look back at it, people are like, where'd you get into grappling from? And I go, oh my God, it was Bret Hart. Oh my God. I was trying to do all those technical moves. I didn't know what I was doing then. And if you do those moves in grappling for real, you could hurt people. So you try to develop a nice way of doing it. Now, fast forward many years older, now I actually do them to people when we are grappling and we are wrestling because I could get away with it. So I get that part. My qualm that I started thinking about it just in terms of branding is, how do you, a guy named Chris Sharp, not have a sharpshooter as a finishing move?
Mark Mayhem, one of my rivals, had the sharpshooter. I did the Texas Cloverleaf.
Okay.
It was so much easier to set up, too.
But I'm just saying, from a branding standpoint, it's in the name.
Yeah. I remember watching Dean Malenko do the Texas Cloverleaf and watching it on my VCR frame by frame by frame by frame to figure out, oh, okay, he bends that leg into a triangle. Yeah. Then he puts this arm under and this one over. That's how I learned to do it.
That's impressive. Yeah. That's impressive. I will tell you this, as a grappler now, if somebody tries to get me in a triangle choke, that is something that I go for. But I have certain rules.
Okay.
The rules are as follows. I don't pick on civilians. So you
pretty good rule, okay.
You kind of have to be a pro wrestling fan. So I don't just do random ass crippler cross faces to people. I kind of go, are you a fan? And then once they are a fan, I do it to my training partners that I know really well. And we've been training forever because you end up doing the same things over and over again. So I tell people, I'm like, okay, cool. I'll do it every once in a while as a gag. Well, the third problem that we go into is some of the guys goes, oh, you can't hit me with that. And I go, listen, guy, I put in a lot of time as a kid doing these moves. I'm very familiar with how they work. I just need a slight tweak to make them work. I do want to ask you this because I've heard you talk about Chris Sharp, and I'm so fascinated by him by two reasons. Number one, have you ever imagined a world where Chris Sharp is a prominent wrestler? And if so, what happened to that character if it had gone where you would have wanted it to go?
I think that my interest in wrestling and independent wrestling just came on probably 10 to 12 years too early.
Absolutely.
Right, because I trained in 2002, so I would have been getting onto the independent scene in 2003, 4, like that time, when the independent scene just wasn't what it is today. So I don't know what it would look like. I think that I would have to really spend a lot of time on the independents to make a name for myself, to even maybe possibly get considered by Impact Wrestling or WWE or Ring of Honor. So I don't know. I mean, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And I'm sitting here right now, we're having this conversation because of everything that's led up to this moment. So I'm really glad that I started training as a pro wrestler. And I kind of came to a crossroads. I was training in the summer. It was time to go back to school that year, school. And I was like, all right, well, what do I want to continue with? Is it wrestling school or is it school? Because I'm a firm believer in that phrase, the man who chases two rabbits catches none.
Sure.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to get my communication studies degree. And then if I want, wrestling will always be there. And that's kind of what I did. Now I'm able to like dip my toe in every once in a while.
Yeah.
Be a ring announcer, do interviews.
Well, I want to make sure that people know that rock bottom. And honestly, dude.
Thank you. Wow.
I really feel like I am set up to be harsh on people, but I saw that and I go, that's a legit good rock bottom from Van Vliet.
Thank you.
Good work on that.
That was a lot of practicing on trampolines from age 16 to that exact moment.
Now, having said that, I do have to be very honest with you, which is you were in a hotel room, you and your videographer, see
Wow,
beds.
I can't believe you saw this. Jeez.
Oh, I do my research, my friend.
Wow.
When I saw the two of you do it, I go, well, they're just like regular dudes, which is, oh, there's a bed here. I'm going to beat you up and do a pro wrestling move because that tells me true fandom. Your videographer's was better, though.
Oh, yeah.
But is it because your cell was better? Oh, okay. Just want to make sure. Okay.
Zeus is awesome, and he's one of my best friends, but he didn't know how to take it. I said, we're gonna bend down here. I'm gonna put my hand on your back, and you're gonna jump. And it was like dead weight.
Oh, wow.
But I jumped up big time. I was wiggling my legs in the air.
I mean, that's the whole thing.
Yes.
It's the cell. It's when that happens because I looked at it and I go, damn, I didn't expect that from the videographer. It was
that was also like take 17 at that point.
Oh, was that really?
After,
okay.
maybe a few of these.
Understood. You are famous for saying there's never been a better time to be a pro wrestling fan than right now. Which, true. When was the worst time to be a pro wrestling fan? Because here's why I like you. When I've seen you do interviews and I've seen you like tell the stories and help these people find their narratives in the middle of interviews, you really are good at being honest about your journey and saying, man, it's such a great time, such positivity.
Yeah.
But the thing that really hooks me is I go, man, he's been around through some of the crap that I've been around. And some of these Laps fans, whenever they come back, they go, oh, yeah, I wasn't here for that.
Yeah.
So you, that means, had to go through the exact same crap that I had to go to. So what were some of the areas that were hard for you to get through?
I was briefly lapsed during college. So for me, it was probably 03 to 05.
Sure.
And I was still watching, but I wasn't watching religiously. I didn't need to sit down on Monday night at 9 o'clock because when you're in college, Monday night at 9 o'clock was like half-price drinks at this bar over here.
Sure, of course.
So I wasn't following it as religiously.
Okay.
I was just kind of aware of what was going on, but I think it's a pretty easy argument to say that after WCW got bought, after ECW went away, and after Vince turned WWF into WWE,
sure,
it really took a dip because they could do whatever they wanted and you had to tune in because there was no other option. And I think that when TNA started to come around, or I should say NWA TNA started to come around with their pay-per-view format, that started to, I think, lift the business and make them go, oh, there's someone else out here. But when the invasion first happened, it was super exciting. Like that episode of Nitro where Shane shows up in somewhere in Florida, was it Daytona Beach?
Yep.
And Vince is in Cleveland, I think it was. That was amazing. And
Yeah.
I think we all went, oh my God, every dream match is possible now. And then the roster just got super bloated and like the invasion pay-per-view and the next year or two after that was kind of just, And then guys who were unbelievably talented like Lance Storm or Mike Awesome, may he rest in peace, just kind of got delegated to like the mid-card.
Yeah.
And it's like, that sucks so much. So I'd say that for me was a really tough time. I'd say the second one in my, off the top of my head here, was after TNA tried to do the Monday Night Wars for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And look, TNA was great. I was a massive fan of the X Division. I would buy the AJ Styles DVD.
Oh my God.
Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, Ultimate X matches. All of that was so good. Then the next era with Kurt Angle and Sting and Hogan. And then it just kind of like fell off. And again, WWE had no real competition from like 2013-ish for a few years. And I think that as well was like, they can kind of do what they want to do. And after Rock had his last WrestleMania match, I just think it was just kind of like, oh, I don't know. It's not as entertaining as it once was.
Sure. Can I ask this? Because this is something I think about often. That whole invasion angle. Is it just potentially that it could have never lived up to like any of our expectations?
Yeah.
Because I think about that often where I go, oh, my expectations were here. I was also a child looking at that being like, well, it better be this good or it's going to suck. And we could already see that we had hit a peak with the Attitude Era. So as a result of that, you know, how would you like to have seen it gone during the Invasion Era to maybe make it a little bit better?
I would have liked it if Eric Bischoff had followed through and actually bought WCW, which was part of the plan. He had the financing lined up to do this. I think that wrestling needs competition. Like it drives the industry. So I think that Vince buying it, while that was a great feather in his cap, I think that it was a really bad move for the business at that time.
Sure.
So I think the way that I would have liked to have seen that go is Ted Turner, no longer the owner, Eric Bischoff or someone else comes in and buys it and runs it so that from the outside looking in, the product stays fairly similar.
Okay.
I never chose sides. I certainly watched more of Raw than I did of Nitro, but I didn't choose sides. I was never saying, oh, I'm a WWF guy. I hate WCW, which is really weird now, right? Like people have to like choose sides.
Yeah.
I either love AEW and hate WWE or love WWE and hate AEW. And I think that's such a crazy thing.
Yeah, it's really stupid. I, as a meme maker, can appreciate a good joke. So I don't mind when I go, oh, that's a good slam on AEW fans. Like, that's just funny. But if somebody's to ask me, like, oh, do you hate either of them? I go, I don't care. I want good wrestling. Like, I just want people to be employed, have a good life. We've seen so many tragic and rough things happen to so many people that we appreciate their work, that why wouldn't you want more options for them? So I don't need to take a side here. And also, sorry, Internet, who gives a shit what I think? Like, it's nice to have an opinion, but to do it where there's pitchforks and like holding people accountable, it's kind of hard. Having said that, this is a rough transition, so stay with me here.
How are we doing on that? We're pretty even.
Pretty even. I try to match the guest. If you're lush, I try to go. No, don't. Okay, listen. Don't make me already get into the whole thing that I wanted to get into here, which is, Chris. Part of the reason why I wanted to do this is because I respect your work. I like you. I think that you have a good presence. You seem like a very nice guy in your interviews.
That's very kind.
Here's the unfortunate part: is that when you're doing the wrestling interviews, I don't have as much of a foothold there. That's not really my area. But when I see you interviewing Stipe, I think, okay, he has a backstory with that guy, Ohio. Can't get involved there. I see you going to Vitor Belfort, and I go, okay, Chris, this is nice.
He was in AEW.
He was in AEW. I do accept that. The crossing over into our world for the MMA stuff was enough for me to start being like, I don't want to get competitive with him because I really like him, and we just exist in different bubbles. But then I start seeing you do more and more people. I go, Paige Van Zandt. I was like, I've never interviewed Paige Van Zandt. I was like, oh my God, he's about to get the heel version of me. And the heel version of me is just me. There's no fancy name. Like, it's just me showing up. And I realized
just make your last name Sharp. That's all you need to do.
Well, considering that I would use a sharpshooter, unlike some people. But I remember telling one of my friends, I go, all right, I see Chris is over here. He's doing very good interviews. It's getting a little too close.
I want to do more of them too.
I know, and that's how I know.
I think that my knowledge of MMA is nowhere close to your knowledge of MMA, and I am very self-aware of that, right? But I've also always approached my interviews kind of as like I'm trying to paint with the broadest brush as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that when you get into the weeds of stuff, you alienate a really big portion of your audience who may not have watched UFC 213,
Sure.
you know? So I try to paint with pretty broad brushes. And when I talk to someone like Sean O'Malley or Paige Van Zandt or Stipe, what I'm more interested in is like, you get punched in the face for a living. Yeah. And you also punch people in the face for a living.
Yeah.
Like, where's the mindset behind that? Because you don't just wake up one day and go, you know what?
I want to do that.
Yeah, I want to punch people in the face for a living.
I'm going to punch Chris Van Vliet today.
It's like when I see Ariel Helwani interviewing Randy Orton or AJ Styles.
Thank
I'm like,
you.
Look, I know that Ariel is a wrestling fan, and I have tremendous amount of respect for the work that he does, and he's amazing and a fellow Canadian, and I love that and respect that. But I'm like, oh man, I wish I could have that interview with AJ Styles.
We just became better friends
Okay.
right now. Okay. You don't have to let people beat you up, my friend. Watching you get slapped on the chest was a lot of anxiety for a fellow host, because as I saw it, I'm pretty game for a lot of stuff too. But the moment I saw you take off the shirt and look at them like, all right, let's go, I go, no, please save this young man. Oh, God.
I knew what to expect.
I know you know what to expect,
Yeah.
but you don't have to do it. You're there, man. You're already a made man in wrestling.
So I had interviewed Shawn Spears 6 months before.
Okay.
Right after he left WWE, right before he signed with AEW, like I was the first person. I was so grateful to be able to share that conversation with him, where he told me the whole story of like asking for his WWE release and actually being granted his release. And then he's like, well, I'm opening up this new school. It's called Flatbacks. If you're ever in town, like come by and you know how to bump. Come by and we'll make a segment. I'm like, okay. I honestly thought I was just going to like take a few bumps, run the ropes, and like that would be that. And he goes, how about after all that, I give you a chop? And I'm like, oh, okay, like one chop? Sure.
Right.
I go, let's make it a little bit more interesting. Why don't you line up all your students and then have them chop me? And he's like,
Let's pause here for a second. So you said, I'm going to go ahead and win this hand in poker. How about I double down on it? God,
but then he doubled down on me and went, by the way, now that the camera's rolling, everybody gets 2 chops. And I went, hold on. 20? Oh, he goes, take off your shirt and get in the corner.
Oh, man.
Actually, he said that very aggressively. He's like, take off your shirt and get in the corner. I was like,
right.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know. It made for an entertaining video.
It did.
As much as I love conversations and I love doing interviews, I'm learning now, and right before we started this interview, I'm trying to figure out another workout segment with John Morrison. I'm learning that people love that stuff that they can watch in 6 months or a year or 2 years, like the Chops video. Yeah. And it doesn't get old.
Yeah, I know, man. I worry about you, man.
I'll be okay.
I don't know about that.
I'll be okay.
Okay. Now you're starting to go to gyms. That Gold's Gym thing that you did, talk about anxiety. Those 200-pound weights that you picked up, that's not happening here, bro.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you know your limits, right?
Yeah.
And that was such a cool thing. So I've been wanting to do a segment with Mike O'Hearn for a long time. That guy is a legend when it comes to the world of bodybuilding. Yeah. And he sent me a message and said, Billy and I are doing chest tomorrow. I'm like, I'm in. So I called up my buddy Zeus, who's my incredible videographer.
He does great work, by the way. Compliments to him.
Good.
Zeus, wherever you are.
Zeus.dom on Instagram.
Great work.
Incredible. And he's
like, better rock bottom than Chris, but go on.
He's like, let's do it. So 5 a.m., we met up with them, and they had already racked up. I think by the time I got there, they were like warming up with 455 pounds on an incline bench press and throwing it up like it was nothing.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, guys, I'll go warm up with 1 plate over here.
That's fine. But again, where I give you messes, you're in good shape. You make things hard for us as hosts. So when I see you lifting that much, I'm like, they better not expect me to ever do that, because as it is, I got a strength and conditioning guy just to make sure my body doesn't die. And I tell him, I hate weights, but I like you. So if he asks me politely, I go, and I lift it, and he goes, we're doing great, pal. And I go, get off me, dude. I hate you. This is so stupid. Why do people do this? And then I see you over here getting 200-pound weights, and I go, that's more than I weigh. Oh, my God.
I got to be honest. When I watched that back, like there was definitely something in the air that day where I felt stronger, and Billy Gunn's a beast. Yeah. Mike O'Hearn's a legend. Well, they're both legends. And I was just like, hell yeah, I can do this. And then when Mike O'Hearn grabbed 150s, so 150 in each hand, and he's like, it's not heavy enough, so stack another 20 on top of each one.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
So he had 170 in each hand. He was throwing it up for like 10.
Ugh.
Like, geez. So I want to do more of those segments was the whole like point of me bringing that up.
No, that's great. And I think you should, because I think you're the right guy to do it. You're very up for the challenge.
Yeah.
You seem like you're having a blast as you do it. I wouldn't, but hey, A+ to you. Where would you like to take that? Where would you like to go, and where would you like to do one? Like in your head, where would you like
I
to
think I'm realizing that the YouTube algorithm has changed a ton.
Yes.
So my YouTube channel is now 11 years old, which is crazy. And, you know, again, it started kind of by accident as just a digital library for raw interviews to live. And then about 3 years ago, it really shifted to like, oh, I'm going to go out of my way to make these interviews happen. I'm going to drive to Orlando, or when I was living in Florida, like I drove 5 hours to do an interview with Tony Khan. I drove 5.5 hours to do an interview with Chris Jericho in the back of his car right after he got signed with AEW.
Legendary.
Yeah, but you know, I think that YouTube is not favoring these hour-long interviews anymore. So my clips channel, where I'm putting 2 to 8-ish minute clips, is exploding because I think that people go, oh, I can watch this video for 3 minutes rather than watching this video for 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think with the workout videos, if they're 10 to 15 minutes long, you might watch 5 to 10 minutes of it. I would just love to get in the gym with people who have like great physiques or really interesting training habits. I just want to see, like, how do you do it? How does, you know, someone who has amazing abs, how do you get those amazing abs? I mean, the answer is probably like, don't eat pizza every day like me. Or like someone who has like boulder shoulders, or like carrying cross who has like incredible like biceps. Like,
absolutely. What's
the deal?
Yeah.
So I would just love to like step into the gym with them and do their workout with them.
And now that I realize that you live in LA, that means you're one of us. What is the most LA thing that you are now currently starting to do? Because again, Canadian, good kid, very, very nice to people. But what is the most LA thing about you now?
It's hiking. Which is the most LA thing ever.
Understood, yeah.
And like that's not to say that people don't hike in other cities, but hiking here is like grabbing a beer here.
Absolutely.
Whereas hiking in a lot of other cities or states is like, it's a thing, right? Like you're putting on your hiking shoes and you're going to the mountain. Here it's like, oh, hey, do you want to walk to the end of this road? Like where the houses are, and then there's some sort of hiking trail. So it's hiking.
Okay.
And I eat a lot more tacos here.
That's good.
Do you know Letterkenny?
Yes, of course I do.
You know their bit about LA?
Yes.
So they're like, oh, in LA. Oh, these tacos in LA. Apparently when you've been to LA or lived in LA, you say LA.
When I heard you were coming here, I thought at first, I'd be like, well, I'll probably run into you at some wrestling show. And then we have pandemic. It's harder to get to shows. Have you been to any wrestling shows out here yet?
Yeah, I've only been to one, and there really hasn't been a lot.
No, not a ton.
Because obviously California is more
a little stricter,
than a lot of other places. So I've been to a lot of wrestling shows over the last year and a half, but only 1 or 2 here in Los Angeles.
And what's the one you went to?
I went to PCW Ultra. We had such a good time.
That's a good show.
I want to go to Wrestling Pro Wrestling this Friday. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
But I'm out of town. I was supposed to go with Freddie Prinze Jr., and now who's a massive wrestling fan.
I understand that, but I just want to point out, even though you haven't totally become LA, it is the most LA thing to be like, well, me and Freddie Prinze Jr. are going to go to a wrestling show. It's no big deal.
Actually, I'm not out of town until Saturday. I think I could go.
Did you just realize that right now that you could go?
Yeah, I'm going
If Freddie Prinze Jr. wants to go to a wrestling show with you, you should go.
With you, of all people?
Like, go.
Yeah, I want to, yeah.
Because that's the nice part about it is especially if you see the two of you guys together, you know, it's almost like a frequency movie where it's the younger and older versions of the same guy looking at each other.
It's like Looper?
Yeah. Well, I hope you're not trying to kill Freddie Prinze Jr.
No.
He is a saint. We like him.
Love Freddie Prinze Jr. Yeah, I think I'm going to go. So, yeah, I haven't really been to a lot of shows, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, but that was the part. That was when I knew. I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop waiting. And lo and behold, I'm very glad because you're about to move to Orange County, which means we'll never see you out this way again.
It's not that far.
You say that now.
I know. Well, I've been going back and forth. My girlfriend lives in Costa Mesa. I'm moving in with her. It's not that far. It's 45 minutes to 2 hours. depending on the traffic.
Absolutely, Chris Van Vliet. Tell me all about LA traffic.
Telling all of my friends, hey guys, just so you know, we're still going to be friends.
I'm so glad you say it like that, because I say the opposite, which is, 2 freeways, not seeing you. Sorry, guys.
Is it 2? I think I take 3 to get there.
3
I think
is
it's
iffy.
the 101 to the 5 to the 605 to the 405.
Wouldn't that be 4?
Yes.
Yeah, it's getting there, dude. Chris, question for you that is important to me. I'm so glad that you laugh as I say it's important to me. You go,
The other questions were not important. This one is.
No, this one actually has some heft. Where do you see this going? Because to me, if I look at somebody like you, I think you belong on TV. I think that you are the guy that I would see be on an ESPN or maybe, all things considered, a wrestling show on a cable network. Where do you see this going? Because do you even want that anymore? You've actually got a channel that probably does better numbers than most television shows.
I think I just want more. So
Okay.
I think it's more with my podcast, with my YouTube channels, plural. And
Dick move, by the way. CVV Clips doing better numbers than most interviewers is a lot, dude.
The CVV Clips channel is eclipsing my main channel.
Did it hit like 10 mil or something recently?
Okay. So it hit 10 million like 3 days ago.
Sure.
It just hit 15 million today. Like I had 2 million views yesterday.
Congratulate. You know what?
Thank
Hey,
you.
cheers to that, dude.
Cheers. The last sip here.
That's
Love
great
it.
stuff, dude.
I like how you tap it down here. That's how I know you lived in the Midwest. So I think that media's obviously changed a lot. Back to your question.
Yeah.
Broadcasting's changed a ton. Broadcasting has now, I think, really become narrowcasting, right? Like I think back in the day, it was like you flicked through the channels. You went 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you found something that you either liked or just didn't hate, and then you watched that for the next half hour. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're bored, you just go to YouTube and watch the exact hyper niche thing that you're interested in.
Yeah.
You don't just watch fighting videos. You watch like one particular fighter doing one particular move. Like it's crazy how broadcasting has become niche casting.
Yes.
So I think with that said, I love the niche that I have now with long form interviews and like really digging into people's stories. And, you know, I would like to think in a way like humanizing some of these larger than life characters.
Well, pause here. We'll return to that. I like to tell people there's a degree of difficulty in interviewing, and you've been adept at playing a second fiddle, whether it's an MJF interview where he's doing improv and you're a good scene partner. Like that's and again, don't want to put you over. He is awful.
He's the worst.
But that moment that you're reacting to him and he's feeding you is just like, man, I've worked in improv. I haven't had scene partners that good. Part 2, you then getting like Benoit's son and then having a sensitivity. Like those are 2 completely different spectrums that most interviewers don't ever get asked to do. And the fact that you recognize like, I want to be courteous to you. I want you to tell your story and feel comfortable here. And when he digs deep, and he's not the only wrestler to do this on your show, when they get like to that point where they're really revealing part of themselves to you, you do a good job of steering the ship in a good direction that doesn't make them feel like compromised.
Thank you. Like I've had a few interviews, especially with all these releases, where people have been crying in front of me.
Yeah.
And it's like I did not expect this conversation to go there, but I get it. Yeah. Like, and I want to be here in this moment. I see you and I see what you're going through, and I haven't gone through that. Yeah. And I can't even imagine how hard that would be, but I have the empathy for you. Like I feel for you. Like it just happened the other day with Taya Valkyrie. Mm-hmm. And it happened recently with Peyton Royce. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I have the empathy. And actually I was just interviewing Tony Chimmel the other day, which is going to come out later this week. He really hasn't done a lot of interviews at all. Yeah. And we started talking about gratitude. And he pulls his glasses off and starts wiping his eyes and goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I just had a moment there." And I was like, wow. And it's just, I want to be so in the moment that like this is just a conversation and I'm not thinking about like, oh, there's a mic in front of me and a camera right here. And I just think that the more human that an interview can be, the more relatable that it is. And, that David Benoit interview was great because it's all the stuff people don't see on camera that made that interview great. We were doing that interview on a Friday morning. I flew in the night before on a Thursday. I landed at like 6 o'clock. This was in Las Vegas. He flew in from Edmonton. He was spending a few days just kind of like hanging out with his buddy. I'm like, all right, I will fly into Las Vegas. We will do this interview. Like, thank you so much for trusting me and allowing me to do this interview.
Yeah.
I landed at like 6 o'clock and I'm like, our interview's not till like 10 tomorrow. What are we going to do? So I shot him a message. I said, do you guys like want to grab dinner or a drink? He's like, yeah, sure. We ended up like grabbing a bunch of drinks and like walking around Las Vegas. And like at one point that night, he turns to me and goes, hey man, nothing's off limits.
Damn.
And I'm like, nothing? He goes, no, bro, trust you. And whatever you want to talk about, we can talk about. And I went, oh, wow. And because we had shared that time together and built that rapport, it made the interview the next day that much smoother.
Yep. I just think of that kid and I go, I don't know him. I don't know much of his story other than when I saw your interview with him. You immediately have that sympathy of he went through something unfathomable. So you have that already built into your system. But then to hear him say things like, yeah, all things considered, I'm thinking maybe I want to train. Maybe I want to do this. And you go, man, the fact that you would want to do that, it's hard for me as an interviewer not to put in my own subjectivity of, are you sure? Okay.
Well,
and
I was
I thought,
he's like, his middle name's Chris. And I'm like, so you want to perform as Chris Benoit? He's like, yeah, bro. I'm like, really?
well, you do a good job of presenting the questions that people sometimes want to ask. And that's something that I think is a high degree of difficulty in terms of, it's harder when you're in front of people. I challenge most people on the internet when they want to say shitty things about people to be in front of that person. And then as an actual human being, ask them in a shitty way. So a lot of times you try to put this out there where you'll say, the internet is saying these things about you.
Yeah.
And you really want to make sure that you're not being like, hey, listen, I want to be up front in that it is important we talk about this, but that is there something behind this that we don't know? And how do you feel about it?
Yeah, or I'll say to someone like, what would you say to somebody who says ...
Yeah, of course.
Or a lot of times, if you watch my interviews, I don't even ask questions. I'll just say, man, it sounds like you're saying, or it feels like, or, it seems like, which is, I didn't even know I was doing. And then I interviewed Chris Voss, who's a former FBI negotiator, and wrote an amazing book called Never Split the Difference, which is all about like how we negotiate in our everyday lives. And it's a thing called mirroring.
Okay. Yep.
Where you're basically like repeating a bit of what that other person's saying. You start your sentence with, it seems like, it feels like, and now I'm catching myself doing that like unintentionally. I'm like, oh, I guess I kind of do that without even knowing I'm doing that.
And you don't even know, but when you perform stand-up, have you done that yet?
No.
Okay.
Maybe one day.
You know what? You have the personality and you have the presence for it. But if you perform stand-up, one of the best things you can do if you get a heckler is to repeat what they said. So you start by repeating and saying like, what did you say about me? You said my head looks really big. Wait for laugh, moment. Okay. Did you pay $20 to come see me to tell me that my head's big? Did you think I wasn't aware of this? You play with the moment.
Yeah.
Then you go into them and it's like, should we be talking about what you have here, sir? And then you go into them and you wait for the crowd because now they're building the anticipation.
Yeah.
So for me, I tell people, I go, I can't believe you paid money to come booby. Oh, okay. Well, now I get to have fun. And here's the saddest part. People paid to come see me, not you.
Yeah.
So we play with that. We have fun with it. But I always think to myself, how am I going to win this guy over? Like, how am I going to turn this?
Yeah.
So when I see wrestlers doing really good crowd work, I have a high appreciation because
yeah.
it is very uneasy. And it's part of the gig that they don't necessarily tell you have to do. Like, yeah, of course, you want to play to the audience. But have you been booed before?
I haven't been in a wrestling ring enough.
No. I'm just saying in general.
Oh, I don't know.
The answer's no. You would know if you've been booed.
Not.
Yeah.
By a crowd? No.
Yeah, because of course. Nice guy, good guy.
Sure.
The baby face, if you would.
If you will.
It will jar you the first time. And then you just kind of look and you're like, why are you booing me? Like,
unless I was trying to be a bad guy, then I'd be like, yeah.
Well, if you build that in, but sometimes, again, you get the Rock syndrome where you walk in, you go, why are you booing me? I'm the good guy.
Yeah.
And then you think to it, you're like, you guys don't even know. In 20 years, I will be the person you pay all of the money to for all things entertainment. So before we transition to the second part of the interview, I did want to ask this. So I feel like now, by proxy, I have gotten 1 degree closer to The Rock because you have developed a very good relationship with Dwayne Johnson just by doing interviews. What do you think that he saw in you that made him go like, yeah, I get this guy. I root for him.
I honestly don't think it is something special with me. Mm-hmm. I just think The Rock's relationship with journalists and reporters in general is amazing.
Yeah.
Because The Rock gets it.
Yeah.
Like The Rock is one of the few celebrities that when he goes into that interview room, it doesn't feel like a chore for him.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of there's a lot of actors who go, I've already made the movie.
Yeah.
You've already taken the posters for taken the pictures for the billboards and the posters. I don't want to promote the movie and do 400 interviews. The Rock, I think, goes, yeah, sign me up for this. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
So I think it's just the fact that he makes the best of those situations. And it's a really rare thing. I've had it with like, Rock's really good. Will Smith's amazing at that. Yeah. Anthony Mackie's really good.
He's very good.
Oprah's really good at that, but like they get it. Mm-hmm. And Oprah probably gets it because she's been on the other side for so long. But I think that it's just that he enjoys that moment. He's so self-aware that he's one of the biggest stars in the world that he wants to make the moment inclusive of you as well.
I get that. But he also can pinpoint that you're a wrestling fan.
And he knows that I'm going to ask him a wrestling question literally every time I sit down with him.
Yeah, of course.
So I think, and I was really fortunate the first time I did an interview with The Rock, it was backstage at Raw as he was preparing for WrestleMania 28 with Cena. And The Rock also has a great memory. So I don't think he needs any prompting. I think that when I walk in the room, he goes, oh, Chris. Like, he knows my name. I was on the show that he grew up watching for a long time called Deco Drive in Miami. It was just like, it was a lot of all these things aligning together. Yeah. So Rock's awesome. And they say you shouldn't meet your heroes. If your hero's Dwayne Johnson, try to meet him.
Absolutely. I just knew that when I saw you interviewing him, you did the good thing for all of us fans, which is, oh boy, I want to get this wrestling question in, but I'm going to ask you about Too Fast and... which one is this? Yeah. Is it a Jumanji? Sure. This one where you're in a jungle, question mark. How you feel? Great. Wait, time. Yeah. What's going on at WrestleMania? Are you going to be at WrestleMania? Tell us right now. Is it Roman Reigns? Tell us right now.
I sat down with him for Rampage.
Yeah.
He was paired with Jeffrey Dean Morgan for that interview. And I sat down and I was flying. So I'd flown in from Miami to LA to do that interview. Then I was going straight from LA to New Orleans for WrestleMania 34. And I sat down with him. I'm like, oh, good to see you. Oh, good. Always good to see you, man. I said, see you this Sunday, right? He's like, what's this Sunday? I'm like, WrestleMania. He's like, oh, I won't be there. And we were rolling and I could see that the camera was like the red light was on. And I was like, oh, damn. I just got The Rock to tell us he's not going to be at WrestleMania. The second I walked out of that interview, I was like grabbing the tapes, shoving it in my computer, and uploading it to YouTube as quickly as I could. The Rock says, I won't be there. And I was like, great.
What a moment.
The fact that he didn't even know, like, oh, it's this one. Oh, yeah, no, I won't be there. You won't see me there.
I mean, listen, dude, getting those moments far and few between, but I could tell you got his respect, and I thought that was really dope for you. So congratulations to you on that, sir.
Thank you.
So I think what we're going to do now is we're actually going to transition. Now that we finished this one beer, we have to have more beers. So what we're going to do is we are now going to transition to a portion of the show where we're going to ask each other questions. Because here's the thing. When you're sitting next to a quite good question asker, is that what we want to call you?
That's my official title.
That's the official title.
Yeah.
You want to utilize that skill and see if he's able to ask me some questions. So we're going to go and exchange some. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now switching to a segment of the show where we find out how good is Chris Van Vliet at asking questions, because He's pretty good when he has his show, which is called Insight, in case you didn't know that. But now we get to find out how he gets to interview somebody who he barely knows, because we've never really met. This is our first time meeting in person. Mm-hmm. And aside from maybe kind of roasting you on the internet, this is one of the few times that we have interacted. So what we're going to do is we're going to exchange cups. You wrote some questions for me. You wrote 5 questions for me. I wrote 5 questions for you. We will get to asking those, but we are actually making our way through a flight of drinks. Now, here's the one issue. You have already drank your first one, which is the Life is a Peach.
These are tiny. It's a flight. It's 2 sips.
I understand that. I want to make sure that you are not having to be in the gym with Billy Gunn for long that you need to be, if we can possibly make it to be. Are you nervous about any kind of questions? Because, again, you didn't give me any restrictions when we started this. So is there any nervousness to any question that could be in there?
No. What's the worst thing you could possibly ask?
Shit, I should go back then.
Jeez.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
And like for the questions I wrote for you, I was like, yeah, selfishly, I just wanted to kind of like know some things. That cider was amazing, by the way.
The cider was really, really good.
I've now moved on to the Pilsner.
Well, here, don't do that. Do this.
Cheers.
Okay, cheers. I'm going to catch up to you as we do it. So, all right. Would you like to start off, or do you want me to start off, sir?
You start off answering one of my questions.
Okay.
Start off with one of my questions. Yeah.
Question the first. And it said, what would your wrestling name be? That's a very good question.
Well, we talked about it earlier.
We did.
We talked about Chris Sharp. And
we did. Chris Sharp is such a good name, though.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could beat that.
I honestly think Chris Sharp should have been my stage name when I moved to America. Chris Van Vliet's fine once you know how to say it and spell it.
The only thing I can think of is, I figure as a brown person, they would make me into a luchador. So
you'd be wearing a mask.
I don't, dude. And I've got this. So having glasses and mask, I feel would be a
amazing, by the way.
When did you get your LASIK?
4 years ago.
And?
Life-changing.
Okay, but you know what my fear with LASIK is?
The same fear as everybody else?
Which is?
There's lasers poking my eyeballs?
Less about that and more, even when you do the puff thing, I always turn away. Like every time they've done the puff just to check your eyes, I always go, and I always go, I'm sorry. Sorry.
You'll be okay.
You think so?
Yes.
I'm very nervous about that.
I did it at the same place where The Rock got his done. And I went, if The Rock, it was like 10 minutes from where I lived when I was in Florida. I'm like, if The Rock can trust his eyes to Dr. Lesnar, I can trust my eyes to Dr. Lesnar.
All right. There's also a moment where in high school, I scored a goal and they attributed it to a guy named Max Esparza. And I go, what Mexican is named Max? Like, it's not going to happen.
Maybe they meant Mex.
Maybe they did. That's actually a very, very appropriate joke. I just knew that at the time I was like, I used to say anything shitty that happened, it was Max's fault. So I created Max into like this very, not heel. Because again, we talked about this, where if people look at the two of us on camera, nobody thinks you're the heel.
I don't know.
0 people will think you're the heel. I guarantee you that. Even with Chris Van Vliet, not happening.
But if I was wearing a suit right now, and maybe I was seated back a little bit like this.
I still don't think people would think that.
Crossing my leg here.
I still think most people would have more sympathy for you and as the good guy and be interested in your hero journey than I am. So, good question. Thank you very much for that.
Second best movie after Back to the Future. Back to the Future. Favorite movie of all time?
I've researched that. Yes, of course.
Jurassic Park is the second best movie.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no Steven Spielberg, maybe the greatest director that is currently alive right now.
Ooh, okay.
Christopher Nolan makes amazing movies,
okay.
But when you look at Steven Spielberg's filmography, come on.
It's really good. I would say, though, the estate of Marty Scorsese may have a few words with you right now.
Fantastic. The estate, he's still alive.
Well, he doesn't get involved in this. His estate actually does all of them.
Make it sound like he's dead.
Listen, Marty Scorsese, I'm so sorry. No ill will upon you.
Jaws and all the Indiana Jones films.
I love Senor Spielberg the most. However, why do you love Back to the Future so much? Like, what is it about that movie that speaks to you? Because I've heard you name drop that movie in a number of times.
Here's why I love Back to the Future so much.
Okay.
Here's why Back to the Future is the greatest movie of all time. Because Back to the Future speaks to the importance of moments. If this thing doesn't happen, then that thing doesn't happen. If I didn't turn left at this light when I was supposed to turn right, this thing doesn't happen and that thing doesn't happen. And I think that the older I got, the more I started to realize that that movie was speaking to the butterfly effect. And it was speaking to how important each interaction with each person is. And we see that when Marty goes back to 1955. If this doesn't happen, that leads to this, that doesn't lead to this, that leads to this. His dad doesn't peeping Tom on his mom, fall out of the tree, all that stuff, right? And I think that we all have those moments in our life where, and The Rock talked about this when I interviewed him, where like The Rock, his dream was to play in the NFL. Okay. He didn't accomplish that dream. It's worked out pretty well for him, right? And he talks about how sometimes the best things in life are the things that don't happen.
Yeah.
And I think about that in terms of Back to the Future of like, your life steers you off the path that you think you're supposed to be on, and it's doing that for a reason. That's why I love that movie so much. And to me, it is the perfect film with incredible performances, an amazing soundtrack, and I'm not just talking about the theme of Back to the Future, but also like Huey Lewis being in the film. It's the perfect film to me.
I'm not going to lie to you. On my way here today, I did listen to Huey Lewis's Power of Love. Absolutely, because I have to get into the mindset of Chris Van Vliet. I said, you know what? What better way to hype myself to get on your level?
You really should have just listened to a bunch of Hawthorne Heights, Starting Line, Blink-182, Sum 41, Dangerous Summer. That's what you should have done.
I will guarantee you, living a whole life out here in California, I've done my fair share of most of those.
Yeah, and I think that now that we've talked about this, think about that next time in your life when things don't go exactly how you thought that they should have gone, and go, maybe it's leading me to exactly where I need to be.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, listen, dude, I can't promise you I'm going to think that way.
Now you will.
Oh, Chris, God damn it.
Will.
You're so nice and so positive. Fine. All right, I'm going to go to my next question from you. It says, how do people actually afford to buy a house in L.A.?
Yes, it was selfishly asking, you know.
This is a very sad question, especially in this market right now. They don't. So here's what I can tell you. There's this nice jump-off level in entertainment where you are one of the people who does all of the support work for everybody who's important. But the people who are important live in great places.
Of course.
So you just have to kind of get to there. So it's always, whenever I do a job, I'm always working with somebody who's like mega rich. And they'll say something like, they're trying to get me to do the show for less money. And I'm like, how's that?
But how do you get like the $1 million to buy the fixer-upper in Van Nuys that you're going to have to put $150,000 into?
Well, weren't you looking into real estate? Is that where this comes from?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When you said you were looking into real estate and you had moved to Southern California, I said, oh my God.
I was very close to buying a rental property in Big Bear. And I put in an offer like way over asking and still didn't get it.
Yeah. And you know what? You would actually excel in Big Bear. Big Bear is a wonderful place to reside.
I would not be living there. It would be an Airbnb.
Oh.
Yeah, it was going to be a vacation, like a rental property.
Oh, smart.
Yeah, but my girlfriend and I were looking to move to Newport or Costa Mesa, like buy a house.
Yeah.
And it was like, my goodness. Like, we were like, all right, if we can like $1 million somehow scrape together a down payment. And like the $1 million places are like terrible, like fixer-uppers.
Yeah, of course.
And then you go like just a tiny little bit above that to like 1.1 or 1.15. And then those are selling for like 20% over asking.
Yeah. Let me tell you though, and I think this is important to reveal this to you right now. I watch all of your ads just so you can make more money.
Oh
so
my
you're
gosh,
welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, nordvpn.com/CVV. is a current one.
I've heard you talk about my inner ear more than I'd like to think about.
The axle blade is unbelievable.
It's so good. It's so good to see it happening live. Because when I see you do that, I have a sympathy. It's like shows that I like, or people who I know who are on shows, and I watch it on Hulu. Like, shit, I'm going to watch this commercial. God damn it. I really don't.
More importantly, don't just watch it. Just click on the link. That's it. And, if you're really interested, buy the product and use my code. But, like, it bothers me more than anything when someone leaves the comment on my YouTube videos like, interview starts at 2:42. And it's like, yes, we are also in the middle of like a worldwide pandemic. And if you don't want to support the fact that I'm trying to earn some sort of a living here, that just kind of sucks.
Oh, but you're not doing a subscription though. So like you don't charge us for your interview. So that's my whole thing is I go, dude, talk as long as you want.
Thank you.
I'm here to watch, obviously, you talking to some guy that I go, oh, they got released. Let's hear what they have to say.
I have for the longest time said, I don't have a Patreon.
Yeah.
I do not, like, there's some people that, like, charge PayPal, like, shout-outs. I don't do that.
Okay, so the first time somebody explained Twitch to me, and they go, oh, this dude just dropped $20. And I go, why? They go, oh, because they like the channel. I go, why? They just did it. I go, I do that. I talk to people.
Yeah.
I do things live. Get the shit out of here. Like, why would you do that? I've appreciated that, and it is a credit to you and your business model that you made it work. But good Lord, that's the reason why if like, especially while watching your interviews and I'm like doing dishes, I go, I'm not touching it. Just let it go. I'm here for a while.
Thank you.
That's how I have your back, sir.
Thank you.
All right. But the answer is unfortunately very sad.
Yeah.
You just got to kind of like, eat shit.
Be rich. That's how.
Be rich. And you know what? Develop a show.
That might be a good idea. First question you would ask Vince McMahon when you interview him. I love how you phrase this, when I interview him.
You're going to interview
Not
him.
if.
Listen, dude, if I have a betting kind of vibe going on right now, I don't think I'm interviewing him.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't
bro.
know. I honestly don't think Vince McMahon's doing another interview that is not produced by like WWE Network.
And who's to say that they don't hire you then?
I don't know.
Dude, okay. There's too many other questions to ask. I don't want to ruin your business. I do wonder, though, because you're on their radar. Like, they know when people go on your show. I'm sure there are discussions of, you can't go on the show.
Oh, I'm sure.
Or, actually, you're released. You're probably going to go on that show and talk about this. Here's your exclusive window where you can't. I still think there is some world in which you do get to interview Vince McMahon.
Maybe. So I don't know what the first question is because the structure of my interviews is usually like some sort of question at the beginning to like build rapport and show that like I'm endearing myself to you, and then we kind of just ride the ride from there.
Yeah.
So the first question most certainly would not be the most hard-hitting question.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the most impactful question. Probably wouldn't even be the most thoughtful question. It would just be the question like, what could endear me to you the most to make the rest of the interview go better? But I think it's just, for me, I don't want to know about like, I don't want to talk about the Montreal screw job, and I don't care about like the steroid trials. I want to know who is Vince McMahon the human? Mm-hmm. Because we know so very little about Vince McMahon. And like there's this crazy like folklore out there that Vince McMahon didn't know what a burrito was. And like I think it's that type of stuff that's fascinating to people.
Well, it's also that one and don't sneeze in a meeting with him and all those things that you go, wait, is this just a way to check and see who says this dumb story?
Maybe.
Because don't sneeze in a meeting to me is a gag I would do to other people.
But Vince McMahon's like apparently never sick. Mm-hmm. Like that's fascinating to me. Yeah. But the fact that like Vince McMahon is not put into the same category as an entrepreneur, like I'm just making up names here, like Mark Cuban, I think is a real disservice to everything that Vince McMahon has built.
I feel that.
And that we look at him, unfortunately, as more of a wrestling promoter than as an entrepreneur and a businessman. And I would love to dig into that aspect of it.
Can I tell you the one thing I would like to ask Vince?
Yeah.
Okay. In my head, I try to imagine what Thanksgiving dinner looks like with those folks.
Yeah.
And so I've always imagined him about to sit down, turkey's been carved, and he just goes, all right, who's going to take the bump at Mania this year? He looks at Stephanie and just goes, Steph, I think it's your turn.
I think it's your turn.
I appreciate that you do the eyes. I think the eyes.
Everyone has a Vince.
They have to.
Yeah, I just think that we don't know enough about Vince, the grandfather.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's an amazing grandfather.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot that Vince has done that has helped wrestlers. I think he's learned over the years. Like, maybe I should pay for this rehab. Maybe I should do for this.
Well, I think that might have been more just a business move. I think Vince paying for rehab's going, oh, geez, we don't want another headline of like former WWE wrestler.
Fair.
You know?
One more thing on Vince before we go. I'm having a hard time trying to figure this out because with Vince, there's a lot of talk of the old man should step down. And I think as somebody who creates, it is hard for me to accept that. Because could you imagine somebody coming up to you and saying like, CVV, you're getting old. Your interviews, getting a little long in the tooth, bro. You went 1 hour, now it's 2 hours. I think you need to step down. At what point do you say, this is just what I do. I want to rock this until I'm forever old?
I think it's a different situation with Vince because he is literally the best to ever do this. You and I are sitting here right now because of Vince McMahon and everything that he's created.
Absolutely.
Perhaps, maybe he has lost a step over the last 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 years. I don't know.
No.
I've never met the man. But I will say it's probably really difficult to say, hey, maybe you should just relinquish a little bit of that grasp. And like, think about Clint Eastwood, who's still making movies.
Yeah.
No one is going to say to Clint Eastwood, oh, you know what, Mr. Eastwood, that movie on the train wasn't really very good at all. Because it wasn't.
I'm so glad that the closest we got to Chris Van Heel was you being like, not your best work.
Well.
All right, here we go. I see best pizza in LA.
Another LA question.
Damn, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
It's difficult because I've been on a quest to find the best pizza in LA.
Can I ask what your best pizza that you've had so far?
I like a New York style of pizza.
Okay.
So I really like that one in Valley Village, which is Joe Peeps.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, really
I like that
good.
one a
So
lot.
that style of pizza.
Fun story. Have you been to Pitfire right around here?
No. Heard great things, though.
It is good.
It's a chain, right?
It is a chain, but the specificness that they do with that oven is very good.
Pitfire.
So I do like that.
I love Lucifer's.
Lucifer's is good as well.
But that's not the style of pizza I like.
It's hard because I often think what kind of pizza I want to have to bring guests. And there's another spot, the Big Mamas and Papas, that I literally get.
Oh, isn't that the pizza's like...
It's ginormous.
Yeah.
It's like 3 Chris Van Vliets. And what ends up happening is you get that so that you can feed a lot of people. And I have been
Is
both.
it good?
It's not bad. So for me, there's a delineation between, is this pizza pretty good or is it garbage?
When my Clips channel hits 100,000 subscribers, I'm going to buy the giant human-sized pizza.
Amazing, yes.
And make the pepperoni spell out 100K.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's
Please
the plan.
do.
Okay.
And you know what, dude?
Which means everyone needs to subscribe to CV Clips.
I think what's going to happen here is I'm going to drive home. I'm going to think about one, and I'm going to text it to you. I will let you know. But, like, there are some places that are hidden gems that I have loved. There's even one almost, you're in Sherman Oaks. It's kind of that way. It's like a rock and roll pizza that surprised me. Where I go, oh my God, it was actually not bad.
Okay.
So I kind of enjoyed that one. But yeah, I'll give you some of the secret sauce on that one,
All
my
right.
friend.
What are interviewing pet peeves
It's there.
that you hate to see?
Yeah.
The biggest one is people who don't listen. That's the biggest one. And you've been very good at this.
I'm trying, bro. And I told my friends, and I told you this off air, it really does mean a lot to me because you are somebody who actively listens to people. And because I'm doing the live switching, as you guys can see here as I do this.
Look at that.
2, 3, I told him, I go, he's maybe the one person I don't want to live switch right in front of because he's so good at engagement. But then I said, like, it's just not my show if I didn't do it.
I just think that we'll never have this moment again, ever. We'll never be sitting right here in this very moment, drinking these incredible beers together ever again. And I think that people think that moments are just fleeting. And I think that they think like, oh yeah, we'll do this again sometime. I'll grab beers with you next month.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that people don't appreciate what's in front of them right now. And I think that on top of that, in an interview setting, people just get way too far ahead of themselves. They ask a question, and then instead of listening to the answer of the question that they just asked, they start skipping ahead to what's the next question I'm going to ask. And sometimes they'll even like be like, okay, well, I asked question 3. Now I'm going to ask question 4, which probably has nothing to do with question 3.
Yeah.
It's not even a pet peeve. It's inconsiderate. Larry King said it best. I never learned anything while I was talking. And I think that that's a really big thing of like, ask the question, then shut up and listen.
Absolutely. And you were very good at getting out of the way.
That has been something I have learned and I'm still learning. And I learned it because we would be, when I first started doing junket interviews, where you're with a celebrity and they're in their chair and you're in your chair, I was learning it was really difficult to clip sound bites if I was talking over their words. So I learned a few years into my career of like, ask the question and then just, that's it. I think the 80-20 rule applies a lot to interviewing, and it should be 80% of the interviewee talking and 20% or less of the interviewer talking.
Yeah. Don't break down that for this interview because I feel like I didn't hit 20, but that's okay. That's fine. All right, here we go. What is my favorite UFC fight of all time? This is a brilliant question. I love this. I have so many.
Give me one.
So a long time ago, before I was doing all this, I actually used to do junkets at UFCs.
Nice.
So it's a different beast. But I was witness to Chris Weidman breaking Anderson Silva's leg. I was privy to Ronda Rousey beating Miesha Tate for a second time. Like some really big moments in MMA history. But like the ones that really speak to me are like GSP fights. Like, of course, Canadian. GSP to me is in that Hall of Fame of he was getting criticism for going in there and basically laying preying on a lot of his opponents, wrestling them, and then not having exciting fights. But there's no greater moment to me than watching GSP win in a second category and then be like, I just want to let everybody know I am actually done. That was fun. Goodbye, everybody. I retire again. And you go,
that's so good.
Thank you. And looking at him and going, he retired again.
Why? Why did he retire after the Bisping fight?
So, a little inside knowledge. I think he was having some health issues. But the first time he retired, it was after, I think, the Johnny Hendricks fight. And I covered that one live. And Dana was especially salty. So sometimes the press row relationship with Dana White can be a little awkward. But Dana wasn't privy to the fact that GSP was going to not continue that night. So he came back to press row and was like, hey, you fucking dummies, get the fuck out of here with it. We're all like, wow. Okay, this is really weird. So he was really salty, and I get it, especially with retrospect. I get it. But GSP had literally, after beating Johnny Hendricks, had gotten so much pressure as to carrying the belt. And it's something that Anderson Silva talked about, BJ Penn talked about, and all of them said that championship does come with a pressure.
Sure.
So watching him talk about that made me go, like, I have a lot of respect for him. Other fights, I would say, of course, Stephan Bonner and Forrest Griffin. Amazing fight. That was one of the first ones that got me in. I was a huge, like, BJ Penn fan for what he was doing at that time.
Yeah.
I wish he would have retired a little bit earlier. That's perfectly fine. That's neither here nor there. But other people who have really impressed me over the past, I would say, like, one of the best fights I've just ever watched is looking at people like GSP, like Israel Adesanya, that when you look at them, you go, there's an art.
Yeah.
And that made me go from, because when I was a kid and I saw UFC, there was so much blood and hair pulling and all those rules where I go, I'm going to stick with pro wrestling. I'm not here yet. This isn't good for me yet. They sanctioned it. I could see the chess. That made me want to learn jiu-jitsu. And after a certain amount of time, it was like those ones where you saw those Ken Shamrock, Tito Ortiz, those pulled you in.
Yeah.
And then you got to see people do art. So
yeah,
that was a little bit of my
it.
trajectory. Where did you fall in? Because I've seen you become more of a fan, and I just didn't know where you got sucked in.
I remember that same friend who got me into pro wrestling. Mm-hmm. I spent New Year's with him, and this would have been the late 90s.
Okay.
And we went to Blockbuster and rented UFC 1, 2, and 3 and watched it that night. We were 15 years old.
Yeah.
So I've been a fan since the very beginning. I've never trained like you. I've never gone in the weeds like you. But I've been a fan ever since then. So, and I've been to plenty of UFCs.
Wait, hold on. I started thinking about this as you were saying it. How have you never trained? Because you know the people, and you're around some of the guys like Karrion Kross actually trains.
Yeah.
He, in your video, wore a Gracie Barra t-shirt, right. And I go, bro, look at that. That's awesome.
I think for me, it's just the amount of commitment, as you know, that it takes. And I've just, before the pandemic, I traveled so much for work.
I get that.
So much that it was really difficult to commit to, honestly, anything in my life where it was like, how many days a week are you doing it?
It depends. Don't ask my wife because her answer is different than mine. I think there are ways to make it happen depending on what you want to do. So I'm like a hobbyist plus. Because I'm involved in the sport, I really like to train as much as possible, but I'm not even competing. But I just train short of competing with people because I know I do certain things that helps people. But little insight for you. And I think you're doing the same thing, which is when you go do those lifts with people, you get better interviews.
Yeah.
When I train with people, the interview they give me, completely different. Because there's like a brotherhood where they go, oh, I beat the shit out of you for 30 minutes. And you go, yeah, it wasn't fun for me. I'm not a superstar athlete. It's pretty clear. But they have a respect for you, and you just think to yourself, I wouldn't have gotten these details if they didn't feel that sense of trust.
Yeah.
So that first question where you get the trust, out the window.
I was a high school wrestler, so I did that.
So how did you not make the transition?
It just wasn't a thing. And I was a high school wrestler from, what was that, 97 to 2001?
Yeah.
Wasn't really a thing. MMA as a sport, where it was all of the sports combined into one, didn't really become a thing till the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
It was, you went to the wrestling coach, and then the next day you went to the jiu-jitsu guy.
Sure.
And the next day you went to your boxing coach. And there's still a lot of that.
Well, now that you bring that up, how are you as a wrestler? Like, what were you like? Were you good? Did you feel like you had a natural... Because again, very athletic. You have a good build. I'm sure you were probably pretty good at it.
So I sucked for the first few years. It was awful. I was 5'1" and 98 pounds.
Okay.
In my freshman year of high school, and didn't win a single match. I don't even know if I scored a single point. Mm. And the next year, equally as bad. And then I started lifting weights and also hit puberty. And all of a sudden, I was way bigger and way better. I think I was wrestling at that point at 149. And I have the same height, about the same height. So 5'10", 149. I had some sort of muscle mass.
Yeah.
And most of the guys I was competing against were 6'1" and spaghetti arms because they, and also 149. So I was just throwing them around and manhandling them, and they might have had better technique, but I had more power.
Yeah.
So more power as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old.
It's still a real thing, dude.
Yeah. So that was definitely where my strengths were. I gave very aggressive cross faces aren't a thing in wrestling like Chris Benoit.
I know.
The cross face where you reach over to grab their arm. I was very aggressive with those cross faces where I would basically turn them into a punch with my arm.
Yeah, of course.
And I would a lot of times break their nose or get a deduction in points because I would reach for their other arm, throw my arm across their face. And I remember one guy bleeding everywhere.
Damn.
And the ref was like, "Oh, we're going to deduct 2 points." I'm like, "I was just going for a crossface. Like, what are you talking about here?"
Important question, though. Did you ever try to hit a pro wrestling move in your wrestling career?
I was losing this one match in my senior year so badly.
Okay.
Like, I knew I was, it was 10 points and the match was over. Like, if they were winning by 10 or more, and I was losing bad, like 8-0. I was just crushing me. And I remember after we went out of bounds and we're coming back in bounds, I said, "Hey, how about I give you a tornado DDT off the referee's table and we call it a match?" And he goes, "What?" And I went, "Tornado DDT?" I was like, "No." And then he just like scored 2 more points and the match ended. Okay. I did have this one move though.
Okay.
I was so proud of. I could get a single leg by snapping in the guy's face, and then I would go for the single leg.
Oh.
I would never be able to get away with this now. But
I don't know about
But in
that.
high school, this worked very well.
Because you know what happened? You did that. I had a
Of course.
quick moment of like, wait, what
And that's
just
all
happened?
it takes is that
Yeah.
third of a second. So, you'd be, trying to grab, right?
Yeah.
And then
I did it again, dude, and I trained, so I'm
and it's
still
right at
looking
your
at
nose. That's the thing. It's like to do as close to the
Fascinating.
I did it so frequently that my buddy would be like, "I can't believe you pulled it off again." And I'm like, "I also can't believe I pulled it off again."
Let me put it to you this way, Chris. I will give you a standing invitation. I would love to teach you some jiu-jitsu.
Oh, I'd love that.
Please come on over. I'll give you a private lesson. I'll teach you how to translate not only what you have as a wrestler, because wrestlers who come into jiu-jitsu have a little bit of an advantage. They just don't know yet.
Interesting.
But what ends up happening is you give them a little bit of the secret sauce, and then they just beast people. So I feel like not only would you know that stuff, but given my leaning toward nonsense, I would also teach you how to hit actual pro wrestling moves in a jiu-jitsu setting.
That is nonsense.
It is nonsense.
Wow.
But when we're done here, I'm going to show you a video of what I did to somebody
can't wait to
yesterday,
see
and I
this.
think you will enjoy that.
All right, question 4 here.
Yes, sir.
Wrestling match you wish you saw live. Boy, I just feel like there's so many. I will say the wrestling match I'm glad I saw live was WrestleMania 18, Rock and Hogan. I was there. And that's like, what an amazing experience. to be
But the
part of that
story
crowd.
is that you almost didn't go to it.
Yeah.
You almost were going to sell the ticket.
Yeah.
So, okay, there are certain big events like Super Bowl, maybe a hockey Stanley Cup, let's say World Series. I think WrestleMania is in that conversation. So you mean to tell me that one of those 4 pillars of our entertainment in the world of sports, you said, I don't know if I'm going to go.
So I was 18 years old, and we had bought the tickets 5 months before, and they were $135. By the way, to sit ringside, 16 rows back at WrestleMania. But we looked at the card, and this was right after WCW had been bought by Vince McMahon, and we looked at the card and we went, as a whole, are we really excited for this pay-per-view? And the answer was like, not really. And there were 3 of us that were going. 2 of my best friends, Greg and Trev. And Trev was like, I don't really care. If we want to sell the tickets, sell the tickets. And Greg was like, no, it's WrestleMania. Like, we got to go to WrestleMania. So we got downtown to Toronto. We're standing outside of Skydome. And we talked to a scalper and we said, how much would you give us for these tickets? And I think he was like, I'll give you like $150. We're like, oh my God, like we'd make some money on this. Like,
Yeah.
and $150 when you're a college student is a ton.
Might as well
of
be
money.
$1 million.
Right.
Yeah.
So we sat outside for like a minute and went, should we really do this? And then we were also like, how many beers can we like drink to make this, as entertaining as possible?
Yeah.
And I'm so glad we did, especially now, like looking back on it. But when you look at that card as a whole, like I don't know if it was booked as good as it could have been. And I think that was us in March of 2020 or 2002 going, I don't know. So yeah, to answer your question, I'm saying I'm glad I was there for that. I think it would be so cool to see like Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, the I Love You super kick. Oh, man. To be there for that live would have been amazing.
Yeah. I feel that. And I had students in speech and debate that were hooligans that would come over to my place. Instead of studying, they'd come drink and watch Raw with me.
Yeah.
And I'd go, okay, this is really bad. I don't know that I should be encouraging this. At the time, I was a grad student at Western Kentucky, and I go, guys, study, please. Like, that's what we're here for, right? And lo and behold, a few years later, I get a call from one of the guys that says, hey, man, I work at University of Phoenix Stadium where WrestleMania is going to be. So I could get really, really good seats for decent prices.
Wow.
And I said, oh, and this was the year that Bret Hart was going to come back. And anybody that knows me knows I was like, well, if Bret Hart is there, I will be there. And this dude tells me, he goes, all right, I got you pretty good seats. So me, him, and our other guy, I say, all I want to do is get drunk with you guys and go do the whole thing. And we did. And here's the thing, Chris, that I think you have to understand is that we are the people that would boo all of the people you're supposed to cheer for. So I think it was the year that Cena was battling Batista.
Yeah.
And we're just sitting there being like, boo, Cena! Yes, Batista, this is great. To the point where my friend, who's a little bit of a shit talker, starts now giving shit to The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels 2 to an Undertaker fan who's a child and goes, hey, call me when your balls drop. Wow. And his dad's looking at him like, I think we're going to fight now. And I look at him and I'm like, I'm not helping you, dude. This is your fault. And lo and behold, we found friends that were right behind us, and we called ourselves a heel section because we said, oh, dude, everybody here that we're actually cheering are the wrong people. So as a result, those guys are some of my friends, and I actually do work with one of those guys a whole bunch now. So
I will say I'm very glad I went to WrestleMania 18 for the record.
Good. Because, again, if you hadn't have gone, we might not have gotten all these great interviews.
Who knows?
Follow-up question. Do those people that you went with, who were kind of on the fence, now, what do they say that you're doing this? Because they think to themselves, I'm sure at that point, like, I don't know, man, we were almost not going to go. But now you're the guy that interviews everybody?
And it wasn't that we weren't going to go because, like, we thought it was awful. It was more of just, like, maybe we could spend that money better.
Sure.
Yeah, no, they're still wrestling fans. So they're like, awesome. Oh my God, you're interviewing that person? And I'm like, I also cannot believe this.
What are 3 things that you're grateful for right now? I would say this. Number 1, I would say I'm grateful for your time because you are somebody who I have a lot of respect for. And I think that in this community, you don't always get to give people their flowers. And so we're in a very not thankful community where you've done a lot of really good content, and it is hard to do that content. So the fact that you were cool to come meet somebody you don't know, have beers, do an interview for my page, and actually talk some shop, that's really cool, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate the kind words. Happy to do it, and thank you for the delicious beer.
Of course, it's very easy to con people with beer, so that's the easy part. Number 2, grateful to have a wonderful wife. What's really hard about doing jobs like this is if people don't understand what you're trying to do. So I've been very blessed to have a wife that when I go, I'm going to go drink with the dude who does interviews. Yeah. He's kind of like me, but like actually famous with what he does and very good at what he does. And she goes, okay. Yeah. Wasn't even okay, do this.
That's
it's
a
just
great
great.
Partner.
And I would say the third thing I'm grateful for is just like health, good health. I think as you train more, you get very excited when you get to show up for training and you feel healthy. And it is hard because you find there are some people who can't train, be it their proximity, like when I didn't have a gym. There are some people who maybe aren't physically able to do jiu-jitsu or able to do those sorts of things. So I've been very lucky in my time to not have any injuries. I've never had any broken bones, all that sort of stuff. And I would say the byproduct of that is having really good training partners. So one of the things that we pride ourselves on, I wrote an article on this once, and I think you'd be interested in it, which is I told people, I go, the reason why Bret Hart said he was the best there is, was, and ever will be, is because he never hurt anybody in the ring. I believe that for me, as a grappler because I've never hurt anybody. And I've been grappling for over 10 years. And every time I grapple with somebody, I make sure that they're safe. Yeah. And as a coach now, and as somebody who leads people on certain kinds of training, especially when it's hard, nobody has ever been hurt. So as hard as we go, nobody ever ends up getting hurt or scarred.
The reason I asked that question is because I think that people don't think in terms of gratitude, period.
Yep.
And the reason I ask that question at the end of my interviews is because the people listening can go, oh my gosh, that person who is so incredibly successful and so incredibly famous is grateful for a lot of the same things that I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
And I just want to be able to hold that mirror up and have the person listening go, I'm really grateful for my family and for my health.
Yeah.
And for all these other things they're listing off.
Yeah. One more question.
The final question here.
I want to see what this is going to... I'm actually excited this was the last one.
Can you cut a promo as Chris Sharp on me right now? Just finish this here first.
Okay.
Wow. Well, 3 things that I'm grateful for is how incredibly good looking I am. Everything that I've ever achieved in my life is because of how good looking I am, how chiseled my jaw is, how straight my teeth are. Number 2, I'm grateful for the fact that I'm smarter than everybody else.
It's true.
Which allows me to ask the questions that I ask in the interviews that I ask. And the only reason that I stop talking when somebody else is talking,
of course,
because it will allow for more room for me to talk when they're done. And the third thing that I'm grateful for in this interview right now is the fact that this interview is finally over.
Absolutely. It's too long.
So grateful for that.
Absolutely. Hey, I just wanted to ask, did you need me to supply you with more of Hogan's shoe polish so you could finish the beard over there? Anyway, Chris.
Yeah, why are people so mean? Why do people think this is not a real beard?
You have a great beard. I don't know what anybody's talking about. That guy who was just talking 2 seconds ago, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Chris, do me a solid. That's your camera over there. Tell the people where they can find your stuff, sir.
But thank you so much, by the way, for inviting me here. And this has been just such a delight. And wherever you're listening to this right now, you can find my podcast, Insight with Chris Van Vliet, a deep dive into the people that you know and love. And just thank you. Appreciate you. I'm also on social media at Chris Van Vliet, so VanVliet. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, wherever you want to spend your time.
It has been a pleasure to get to know you. You are exactly as advertised. A very nice, polite, very fun to talk to human being. I can see why so many people give you the good exclusives and tell you the stories that make all of us intrigued as wrestling fans. And, I always love when there's crossover episodes where you could see like, hey man, maybe we don't coexist all of the time, but like, again, as I mentioned, it's just always important to give the flowers to the people who do good work because you want to see them do good work. And I mean it when I say it. I really want to see you on a cable sports show. I want to see you hosting those things. So all of those things considered, as long as it's not in my way, I really don't care. But I really hope good things for you because you're good people, man. And I really appreciate the time you took with us today, sir.
Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
You.
All right, ladies and gents, don't go anywhere. We just got a little bit left of the show. We'll be right back. And you know what? That's going to do it for us. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Chris Van Vliet. I thought we got to show him in a different way that at least I've seen him in other interviews. So I'm pretty happy about that. And I'm glad that we have a fellow friend in the Southern California pro wrestling community. He's good people. If you haven't done anything yet, like give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to us, it would mean the world to us. You guys know how much we love it. We love interacting with you guys, and we have a lot more interviews coming up very, very soon. So please subscribe to us, tell people about the show, and even shoot me a note and tell me what you like to see. In the meantime, it's been a great day for grappling. We'll see you back on the mats.